What's good, guys? So today we'll be talking about the Flydigi 4 Pro controller. I'll be walking you through all the steps you'd need to set this controller up. And as of the time of making this video, this controller is only compatible for PC and your Nintendo Switch. That's if you've got the Nintendo Switch or you've got the Asus Rog devices as well. So just right off the bat, the first thing I'd like you to know about this controller is it's significantly less in terms of price compared to the PlayStation Dual controller. I got this controller for about 41 quids, and to be honest, that's about three times less than what the current PlayStation Edge controller currently costs. And second of all, if you look at the controller, it's really lightweight, to be honest, compared to the Edge controller. I've got another one on here, but for this one, to be fair, it was just bulky for me, and the back paddles always seem to be in the way. But for this one, if you look at it, the back paddles are actually clickable buttons, so they're not always on the way, and then they can be easily mapped as well. But for the dual edge controller, it was just bulky, and obviously if you've got one, you obviously know what I mean. And then thirdly, to be fair, if you're really worried about the diagonal, you know, analog sticks, is really not a bother, because from side to side, that's from edges to edges with this controller, it's not massive, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not as, the width is not as wide as that of the PlayStation controller. So to be fair, if you're not using this controller, I'll just personally just say at this point you're missing out on actually using this controller. You should get one. I'll leave a link to the description on where you can actually purchase one of these. That's this controllers, and then we'll just get right into the video on talking about the best setup for this controller and how you can get the best performances when playing FPS games like Call of Duty, especially with the ongoing one, Black Ops 6. So this controller, if you're actually wondering what this red stick is, that's the Control Freaks. I use it because it significantly helps improve aiming performances when playing games. I'll leave a link in the description as well, so you can copy yours as well. And then obviously we'll just get right into the video on how to set this controller up on your PC, or if you've got the Nintendo Switch or the Asus Rog. So let's just get right into the video now. So first things first is I'll walk you through on how to switch this controller on, and then how you can actually get it recognized on the application. So normally the controller comes with a USB dongle on here. So if you'd like to connect through the USB dongle, that's absolutely fine. If you'd like to use a Bluetooth connection, that's absolutely fine as well. Or if you'd like to use a wired connection, which I personally always recommend to use a wired connection, then that's brilliant as well. So what you firstly do is on the back of the controller on here, if you can actually have a look into it on here, we've got the on button on here. That's the middle one. So the one at the left on here, that's the button for the USB. The one in the middle is the Bluetooth, and then the one on the right is the Nintendo Switch. So obviously, if you're using a Nintendo Switch, you just need to tick it over to the right button on here, and then when it's on the right button on here for the Nintendo Switch, then you just switch the controller on here. So this is the button for switching the controller on. There's a home icon just right below the right analog sticks. That's this one on here. So you just click it on here, and then that should switch the controller on for you. So obviously, if you're using a Nintendo Switch, that's exactly how you get it connected. But personally, to be fair, to get the best performances off of this controller, I'd recommend you actually use a wired connection. So it just makes sense, to be fair, using a wired connection for it. But if you'd prefer to use a Bluetooth connection, then you just need to switch it over to the Bluetooth side, and then you get it connected. But the most easiest and efficient way to use this controller is just to use the USB buttons, and that's the one on the left on here. So I'll just plug in my USB cable to the controller, and then we can just get started into looking at the application on how to get the best configuration for the application as well. So once the controller is connected to the USB cable, or you've actually used the dongle, then what you need to do is you need to go to this website on here. I'll leave a link in the description below just to get there as easy as possible. And you need to download this software. That's the Flying Smart Space Station 3.0. It's come up with different prompts on installing a .NET framework as well. So you just need to, it's fairly easy, to be honest, straightforward. You just install that one on the systems as well. Now, when this application is all installed, this will be what the icon would look like. That's this one on here. That's the Flydigi Space Station on here. So I'll take off the USB cable just to, show you what exactly it actually brings up when you actually connect it with it. So this is the page you'll be prompted up with. That's the PC controller with series of, controllers they've released over the years. So when you plug in the controller, now it brings in this page for you. So it's fairly easy. What this page is basically saying is this is the regular configuration for the controller. This is the shooting configuration, the fighting configuration, and then the racing configuration, depending on the type of game you're playing. And since we're doing this video today for Black Ops 6, that will be the shooting one we'll really look into configuring today. So you've got the buttons, that's the map buttons, your joysticks, the gyros, you've got triggers, and then general. Basically, that's for the lightning on here on the controller. So all you need to do is, like, for this bit, that's the trigger, I'd personally just say it's really irrelevant because I do not see the need of actually enabling vibration when you're playing games on your controller. And so what we're doing next is we just go to the buttons on here. So here we've got different buttons. This expanded buttons section are for the back paddles on the controller. That's all of this one's on here. So if you look at this controller critically, you can actually see on here you've got labels saying you've got the M4, M3, and then M4, M2, M3, M1. So how this label works is the M2 label on here, that's for this one that's really closer to the trigger on the left, and then the M1 button is for this one that is actually closer to the right handle of the controller as well. So M1 is mapped for this, M3 is mapped for this, M4 is mapped for this, and M2 is mapped for this one as well. So that's for all the expanded buttons that you've got on here that we're actually looking at today. So we've got all the front buttons as well. That's everything basically on here. These buttons here, I don't know. I personally do not use them at all, like for anything, because the reach to get to it's a bit farther on the right side. But if you'd like to configure that, that's absolutely fine for you. And then obviously we've got the front buttons A, B. You can just leave that as it is, no changing of anything on that one. So what we would like to look into now is the expanded buttons. So for the expanded buttons, that's the M2. Mine is currently mapped to the A button, that's for jump. And then for the M1, mine is mapped to the melee button. So if you know already, with Black Ops 6, we've got the primary weapon, the secondary weapon, and the dedicated melee weapon. So instead of actually getting through the circle of switching from the primary weapon to the secondary weapon and then down to the melee, you can just easily map one of the buttons for the dedicated melee, and then when you want to use it, you can just click right into it and get straight from the melee and then straight back into your primary weapon. So I'll just show you on how to get that configured and then set up, and then it's fairly easy, to be honest. So at the back of the controller where you've got all the mapped buttons, you firstly, if you want to map the M2 button, that's the one on here on the left side. So you just click on it, and then when you click on it, you just click the buttons you want to map to it. So for example, I personally use the A button, so I just map in the A, and then that does it. And then if you want to map the M1 button, so you just click on here, and then you click B, and then that maps it up for you. But if you want to get rid of it, probably you want to change it or anything like that, there are two methods you can actually do this. Firstly, you just click it again. Let's say I want to change it to the X button. I just click on X, and then it changes it automatically. And if you notice on here, you can see save successfully. So whichever mapping you're doing on the controller at that particular point in time, it automatically saves it for you. So, but if I want to like change it back to B now, I'll just click on the B and then it automatically changes. You can see it's saving successfully again. But if we just want to get rid of it to just make it null, just like this one, indicating that we have no current map buttons on there, all you need to do is click it and then you can click back on the buttons. That's the M1 button on here. That's this one. And then it just changes it to null for you. So it's fairly straightforward, to be honest. So here now, there's no current map buttons to it. But if you want to map it, you just click it and then you just click on the button that you're looking to map it to. And then that's it really. So now I would just like to talk about the some other functionalities that we've got on here on the Space Station app. So you need to go to the function settings. It's just left on here of the screen. The sleep time, after this period of time, the controller goes to sleep and it can be awakened by pressing the home button. So obviously if the controller is not in use after 15 minutes, it goes to sleep straight away. You can set it up on how you like. If you don't want it to sleep at all, which obviously will take it all on the battery, that's absolutely fine. So the joystick debounce, that's if you're looking on here, the default, the debounce algorithm or the joystick is activated to maintain the stability when the joystick is slightly moved. So like when you move the joystick slightly a bit and then it goes back, like the debounce, that's exactly what that one is for. So you can just enable that one. Automatic calibration on here. This one, after leaving the joystick stationary for 3 seconds, the chip of the controller will collect the center coordinate. So it's basically just returning the movement from the joystick back to the center for you. So that's exactly what this one is doing. Then the joystick accuracy, just leave that to 12 bit. The polling rate, now this one is actually crucial. This is where I feel personally there's a significant difference from this controller to a dual edge controller, to be fair. For this one, you definitely be getting the maximum hertz on the controller if you're using a wired connection. If you're using a Bluetooth connection or probably the dongle, you could be getting, give or take, about 900 or 800 thereabout. But if you do use the wired connection, trust me, once you plug in this controller, you would definitely feel the difference from the wired controller, not gonna lie. And then the joystick center sensitivity, a lot of people use middle, but I personally just prefer fast because obviously Call of Duty is a fast-paced game, so you need to be as responsive as possible. And for this one, do not enable this one, just leave it as it is. And then that's for the function settings. And then the next bit we'll be looking at is, I just really like to touch on this one. That's the rapid fire button. So obviously for the FPS shooters and, all the people who actually play FPS games, you do know we have some weapons that are used to for trigger buttons. So you'd need to be like, tapping on the trigger to get it. Like for example, the Tanto on Call of Duty, that's an SMG class that uses the you tap, 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 tap. So all those type of weapons, that's the tap, tap one. This one just makes it easy for you. So you've got a trigger method on here. I personally use the RB. That's the RB, the right back button on here, the top one, not the RT one, the top one on here. I use that for fire when playing these games. So if you are like me, you can actually just leave it as it is. But if you prefer this one, then you can just easily change it. To be fair, that's from the one we did earlier on here. So all you need to do is that's for the left back on here, and then the RT, you just switch it from RT to RB for you. But personally, I prefer this ones because, for trigger fingers, it's actually quite responsive for me than the underneath ones. So on here, I just like to talk about the rapid fire. So for this rapid fire, the trigger method, you can actually just set it on here. You say press for rapid fire and then press again to stop. Or then hold down for rapid fire. So you want to press the hold down for rapid fire if you're using those rapid fire weapons. That's the tap weapons or semi-auto rifles. So if you're using the semi-auto rifles, you just want to press the hold down for rapid fire and then release to stop. This one, the rapid fire frequency per second, you can experiment with it and then see which one is actually better for you. I personally like to leave it to 24. So as soon as the first rapid fire from the semi-auto rifle kicks in, it automatically just kicks in again, if you know what I mean. So you don't need, if you set this up and then you click on save on here, then you'd see the input will be looking like this. That's the RP and then 24. It's just trying to let you know that the rapid fire is all set on this one, and then it's 24 in terms of the frequency per seconds on how you get the rapid fire. So for this one, you don't need to tap anymore for a semi-auto rifle. All you just need to do is hold it down, just as we've actually instructed on here. That's hold down for rapid fire here, and then release to stop. So all you just need to do is you hold it down, and then that works. So it automatically just press on for rapid fire buttons. So I'll just show an example on here very briefly on Call of Duty on how this works, and then just obviously for clarity's sake on here. So on here we can actually see this is this weapon is actually a semi-auto rifle, so it shoots like obviously burst fire. So for weapons like this, if you've actually set up the triggers, that's for, the trigger button. So instead of actually tapping, you see it automatically just do it. So instead of actually just tap, since this is, you can see it's making it automatic already. So all you need to do is just hold it down. Yeah, and it automatically just shoots as an auto rifle for you. So, instead of actually just making it a tap, or tap, it's just shooting for you. So you just hold it down, and then it's doing the shooting already for you for that one. So you can see it just shooting basically like a burst weapon. That's an automatic rifle. That's basically it. So it's fairly straightforward, guys. So what I'll do is I'll disable this shortly, and then I'll just show you the difference there for both of them. Switch it off. Now I'll just have a look into it now for you. So you can see it's just once, because we need to tap the weapon to keep maintaining automatic shooting, because obviously it's a semi-auto rifle. You can see it from here. But when I get this activated, that's exactly what I was telling you guys, that at any point in time you can keep changing the settings even when you are in game or anything like that. So I'll put it to hold down for rapid fire and release to stop, and then I just click save, and then I go back into the game, and then we can see on here now. You can see, so yeah, it's already shooting. It's an auto rifle. So that's basically it, guys. So you see, the good thing about the burst fire weapon is it's really efficient when it comes to damage, and then it really helps recoil as well. So once I actually just hold it down this way, it just shoots as an automatic rifle instead of the burst fire that it is. So that's basically it, guys. On here, but then the next bit I'd just like to talk about for that one would be that's the macro. So for this macro, a lot of people, there's been complications about it, if it's actually resulting to cheating or anything like that. But personally, I believe this one is fairly straightforward. So for this one, it's more like if you want to press one button twice, instead of actually tapping it, like, a lot of people talk about the why on Call of Duty, but instead of actually just, pressing all of that simultaneously all once, all you can just do on this one is, let's say for example the Y button, I want to set a macro to it. So there's a trigger once on press and hold for loop, and then release to stop, and then press once for a loop, and then press again to stop. So let's say for example the Y button is in charge of actually switching weapons from the primary one to the secondary weapon. So when you press it once, that's the trigger once on press, it's automatically, it's just once. So you press it once, and then that's triggering from the primary weapon to the secondary weapon. But then if you press and hold for loop, so that's, you just press it down and then you hold it down like this, then it automatically switches from the primary weapon to the secondary weapon. So there'd be no need for you to keep tapping or anything like that. You just press it down, and then there's press once for loop, and then press again to stop. So that's, if you press it once, it switches back and forth from the primary weapon to the secondary weapon, and then it switches back and forth again. So for this one, I personally use the trigger once on press. So when I keep it on the trigger once on press like this, I press it again. So that's why and why. So you can set the interval of milliseconds on how you'd like the macro actions to happen. Ideally, the safe controllers is actually better to use from 140, but I personally prefer to use 100 ms for it. So you can just put it for 100 on here. You can do the same for this one as well. So that's taking it down to 100, and then you can do this one as well. That's taking it down to 100 as well, and then you just click save. So you can see on here it's now YY. So for trigger once on press, if I just click it once, that's I just press it once, it automatically switches from the primary button, from the primary weapon rather, to the secondary weapon, and then it switches again from the primary weapon to the secondary weapon. So it just automatically do this switching for you without you having to do anything on there. So that's basically what the macro is. And then for the multi-functions on here, you can actually use this one if you want to map the button to do something else's other than switching from the primary weapon to the secondary weapon. I personally did not use this because, I mean, obviously, come on, look at the controller. There's loads of button to use to do, really basically anything you want to do with the controller, to be fair, rather than having to, set up one button to do multiple functions for you. You can easily just map it to one other button and then use it that way. So that's fairly straightforward. So I'll just get into the game and then I'll have a look into how this works and then the best practices that we can actually use it for. And then that's basically it, to be honest. So for general on here, if you do, that's for the joysticks. We've talked about the buttons, and then we'll be looking at the joysticks. Now for the joysticks, the left joysticks, just leave it as it is, and therefore here on here, the circularity algorithm, you can put it to rectangle, and then for the right joysticks, you can just leave that as it is. Why I personally chose to leave the right joysticks as it is I'm currently using a Control Freaks already for the right joysticks, and there will be basically no need for me to set up any sensitivity curves on there because this Control Freaks is already accurate enough for me to, maintain my aim consistently when actually shooting enemies or anything like that. So yeah, I just basically leave it as it is. Or if you don't use the Control Freaks or you're not interested, which I would 100% recommend you to actually get it. I've left the link down in the description so you can actually copy one for yourself. You can actually just keep this one to rectangle as well. That's for the right joysticks. Now for gyro, we don't use none of that. Then for triggers, now for the left trigger, just leave it as the default values on here. Then the trigger vibration switch this off. Obviously, like I said from the start of the video, there's no point in actually using the vibration for it. And yeah, so that's basically it for the trigger. And then for the general on here, that's basically for the lightning of the controller, if you'd like. Obviously, if you'd like to use probably stream lighting or anything like that, as you keep, clicking them, it keeps changing as well. So I prefer just using breathing. You can set the brightness off it. If you want it super bright, you can actually put it this way. It gets really, really bright. But I obviously just turn it down a bit and then that's it really. Then for on here, you can set the grip. That's the grip on here for the controller as well. So you can click on the test to just test it out. So you can see the grips that's for the triggers as well, and the grips on the controller vibration. But personally, there's no need for any vibration. Just leave it as it is on the controller. So yeah, that's basically it, guys. And then there's a switch mode configuration where you can actually set yours from default from scratch. You can actually set everything that you like for it, and then you can actually use test, like see the polling rate on here on the test tab. We've got it on here, so you can see based on all the controls we're using, we're getting it. And it's returning it back to stationary positions. Everything seemed to work perfectly. And yeah, so that's basically it for the controller. If you do like this video, really resourceful, please do leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel for more content. Let me know what you guys think about this controller. Do you prefer it to the PlayStation Edge controller? If you've got any other controller you'd like me to review, please do leave a comment in the comment section down below. I'll look into this controllers and just get a review for you for that. And then that's basically it, guys. And yeah, so just to wrap up the video, I'll go into a game just to show you how Obviously the one we've discussed today, that's the for the rapid fire, and then the macro, how that actually works, and then that should be all sorted out. So thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.